Snow fell in thick, blinding sheets on Christmas Eve, turning the Montana frontier into an endless white. Silence broken only by the distant howl of wind. Inside a modest log cabin, a single father named Samuel Clay tightened the blanket around his little daughter, Lily, who kept glancing at the door with questions she could not put into words. Samuel had never planned on sending for a mail-order bride, not until the nights grew colder, not until Lily began waking from nightmares, asking when she would have a mother again. Life had stolen too much from them already, his wife, their stability, his peace. Still, he hesitated even as he glanced toward the frosted window. A stranger was coming, someone who might change their lives or only bring more hurt. But when the snowstorm grew violent and the lantern flickered, he found himself wondering if the train had even made it through. He told himself he didn't care. He told himself he had simply done what was necessary for his daughter. The truth, though he refused to admit it, was that loneliness had carved a hollow space inside him too large to ignore anymore. When the sound finally came, the crunch of hesitant footsteps on ice, Samuel froze. Lily rushed toward the door, just as it opened, with a blast of winter air. And there, framed in swirling snow, stood a young woman in rags. Her dress was torn and patched in desperate squares, her shoes wrapped in cloth scraps, and her cheeks were rosy with cold and shame. Her hands trembled around a battered carpet bag, and snowflakes clung to her dark hair. She didn't speak at first. Instead, she stood just beyond the threshold, eyes lowered as though afraid even to take up space in a stranger's home. Lily reached toward her small fingers, touching the woman's worn skirt as if drawn by instinct. Samuel, still half-shadow behind the firelight, stared at the girl he had written to only twice, Helen Mayfield, aged 23, orphaned, penniless, and willing to marry a man she had never seen simply to earn a chance at survival. Helen raised her gaze slowly, and when her eyes locked with Samuel's, something unspoken passed between them. Not love, not yet, but a recognition of two broken people standing on opposite sides of the same storm. "Mr. Clay," she whispered, breath quivering, I hope I have come to the right place." Her voice was soft, cracked by cold and long travel, and Samuel could see she was moments from collapsing. He stepped forward, not out of obligation, but from something old and protective he had not felt in years. "You're in the right place," he said gently. "Come inside before you freeze." Helen stepped in, but with careful restraint, as though she feared her footprints might stain the wooden floor. She clutched her bag tighter. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I know I'm not what anyone expects. I know I don't look—" "You look cold," Samuel interrupted. "That's all." Lily slipped her small hand into Helen's, surprising them both. "Mama says angels come in winter," Lily whispered innocently. Helen blinked hard, swallowing emotion she couldn't hide. As Samuel closed the door, sealing the storm outside, Helen took in the home, warm lantern light, a crackling fire, simple wooden furniture, a quilt draped across Lily's tiny shoulders. She'd never seen a place so modest, yet so full of life. She felt a sting of envy. This was a home built by hands that worked for something real. "I did my best to arrive sooner," Helen said, voice trembling. "But the train was delayed. Then my satchel was stolen. I had nothing but what I'm wearing." She lowered her gaze in shame. "I know I'm not fit for a Christmas. If a bride—" Samuel studied her carefully, her humility, her exhaustion, her courage in simply showing up. She wasn't the polished, delicate bride he had once imagined, but she was something else entirely. She was real and strong, and standing in front of him despite everything she had endured. "You came here," Samuel said, "in a storm where most men wouldn't dare walk 5 feet. That's worth something." Helen felt warmth rise in her chest. Something unfamiliar and dangerous, hope. She set down her bag slowly, her hands still shaking. "I promise I'll repay every dollar you spent bringing me here," she said softly. "I can work, sew, cook, clean, anything you need until you decide if you still wish to go through with the, marriage." Samuel exhaled, realizing the woman before him had expected rejection. From the moment she stepped off that train, But before he could answer, Lily tugged Helen's dress again. "Papa," she said firmly, "she stays." Helen's eyes widened, and she looked at Samuel with fear. Fear of being turned away. Fear of being unwanted one more time in a life full of doors closed in her face. Samuel stepped closer, voice softer. "We'll talk after you've warmed up," he said. "Sit by the fire. This is your home for tonight, no matter what." As Helen moved toward the hearth, her knees nearly buckling in relief, Samuel watched her closely. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for anything. Her first instinct had been to apologize for existing. He realized then that this young woman wasn't just someone to marry. She was someone who desperately needed to belong to a place where kindness did not come at a cost. And on that freezing Christmas Eve, Samuel Clay made a silent promise to himself. If he found even a spark of goodness in her heart, he would shelter her from every storm life had ever thrown her way. Somewhere outside, the wind howled, but inside that small cabin, something fragile and miraculous began to unfold. Helen woke the next morning to the sound of soft humming and the scent of warm bread drifting through the cabin. For a few disoriented seconds, she thought she must be dreaming. She had never known a Christmas morning that felt safe. But when she opened her eyes, she found Lily sitting cross-legged beside her pallet, proudly showing her a wooden doll missing an arm. "Papa fixed her," Lily announced. "She was broken before, but he makes broken things new." Helen smiled gently, brushing a curl from the child's forehead. "He must be very kind." "He is," Lily whispered, "but he's lonely." "So am I," the words pierced Helen's heart. As she rose and folded her blanket, she caught sight of Samuel standing at the stove, sleeves rolled up, whisking something in a bowl. The morning sunlight spilled through the frosted window, casting gold across his face. He looked up briefly, caught Helen's shy nod, and returned to cooking. She wished desperately she had finer clothes, anything but rags patched over rags. But she had nothing else in the world, and shame crept into her cheeks. She smoothed her worn dress and approached him carefully. "Good morning, Mr. Clay," she said. "I can help with breakfast if you'd like." Samuel turned, eyes softening. "You're a guest today. Sit." "I'm not a guest," Helen replied quietly. "I came here to work for my keep until we decide." Samuel wiped his hands on a cloth, walked toward her, and stopped only a foot away. She could see the calm strength in him, something she had feared and longed for. "Helen," he said, voice steady, "you traveled across half the country with no coat, no protection, no guarantee of anything waiting for you. You've earned at least one morning of rest." Her eyes stung unexpectedly. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not with pity, but with respect. Throughout breakfast she remained quiet, answering when spoken to, observing every detail. The cabin was simple, but built with love. Every wooden beam bore the mark of hands that had shaped it. Every shelf carried items that held stories. And the way Samuel looked at Lily, gentle, impatient, made something warm and terrifying bloom inside Helen's chest. She tried hard not to feel anything. She was here out of necessity, not romance. Her heart had no place for dreams. After breakfast, she insisted on washing the dishes. Samuel didn't argue this time. "If you insist," he said with a faint smile, and something fluttered in Helen's stomach so abruptly she nearly dropped a plate. Afterward, as she hung the cloth to dry, Samuel approached her with a surprising tone of nervousness. "Helen," he began, "I want to understand who you are, not just what you can do." Her breath caught. No one had ever asked her that before. People asked what she could clean, what she could mend, what she could endure, but never who she truly was. She clasped her hands together to still their trembling. "There isn't much to tell," she whispered. "My parents died when I was a girl. I lived with relatives, but I was more burden than blessing. When I turned 19, they married me off to a miner twice my age. He died 2 years later in an accident. After that, I had no home left. So I answered a mail-order bride ad, hoping," she hesitated, voice breaking, "hoping someone might want me." Samuel inhaled sharply, not in judgment, but in a quiet ache for what she had suffered. "I didn't send for a wife because I wanted help," he said. "I sent for one because I wanted a partner. Someone strong, someone good." Helen lowered her gaze. I don't know if I'm either. But Lily, who had been coloring at the table, stood up suddenly, marched over, and hugged Helen's leg with fierce conviction. "You're good," Lily said, looking up with clear, trusting eyes. "You're good like Mama was." Helen froze, overwhelmed. She knelt, pulling the child into her arms, and for the first time in years, she let herself weep, quietly, uncontrollably. Samuel watched from a few feet away, his heart twisting in his chest. Something in that moment, watching this fragile, wounded woman hold the one, the person he cherished most, broke, open a truth he had been resisting. She belonged here, not because the contract said so, not because he needed a housekeeper, but because she carried a gentleness and strength no one had ever recognized in her. "Helen," Samuel said softly, "look at me." She lifted her tear-streaked face slowly. "I don't care about the rags you came in. I don't care about your past or what you've lost. I care about who you are right now. And what I see is a woman with more courage than she knows. If you're willing—" He paused, swallowing emotion. "I'd like you to stay. Not as someone working off a debt. Not as a guest. Not even as a stranger hoping to be chosen. But as part of this family. As my wife." Helen inhaled sharply, as if afraid the air might turn to glass and shatter. "But why?" she whispered. "Why choose someone like me?" Samuel stepped closer. "Because I see your worth, even when you don't." The room fell silent except for the soft crackle of the fire. Snow drifted past the window in slow, gentle flakes, as if the storm itself had stilled to listen. Helen placed a trembling hand over her heart. "If you truly want me," she whispered, voice full of awe and fear and longing, "then yes. Yes, I will stay." Lily squealed with joy, wrapping both arms around Helen again. Samuel exhaled, relief and gratitude washing over him. He reached out, touching Helen's cheek with a tenderness she had never known. On that Christmas day, in a cabin warmed by more than fire, a family was reborn, not out of convenience or desperation, but out of the moment. A man looked at a woman in rags and saw the extraordinary heart she had spent her whole life hiding.